It's great to be here at Baruch College. Thank you, Dean Birdsell, for those very warm words of introduction. It's really great to be with you. What you've just seen is, well, it's a little bit of the class I teach, as turned into the public television series that Dean Birdsell was talking about. And the book that I wrote grows out of the class that I've been teaching all these years. And it's a class and it's a book about political philosophy. Now, when I was an undergraduate, when I was a freshman, I tried to take a course in political theory and I couldn't make much sense of it. I was a political junkie as a kid growing up and still am, interested in actual politics, what happens in elections and in campaigns and between the political parties. And I took this course in political theory my freshman year, and they had us read Plato and Aristotle and these famous philosophers. And I found it very dry and arid and daunting, distant and abstract. I couldn't make much sense of it. And so I went back to other things, more concrete things, economics, history, political science, and when I had a chance after graduating, I didn't know what I wanted to be when I grew up, but I had a chance to go off and do some more studying. And I thought I would spend a term reading the history of political thought just to get it under my belt, to figure out what those famous philosophers had to say. And it took me a little longer than a term. And one term became two, and pretty soon I became hooked. And I wound up writing my dissertation in political philosophy. And I haven't really managed to disentangle myself since. But when I started teaching, I wanted to try to design a course that would have interested me back when I was an undergraduate. And so I wanted to connect the big ideas of the philosophers about justice and about rights and about the common good and about equality and liberty and all of those big ideas, to connect what those philosophers had to say with the political debates and the moral dilemmas we confront every day. And so the book deals with those famous philosophers, Aristotle, Immanuel Kant, John Stuart Mill, John Rawls. But it treats them not as museum pieces, not as distant, serene, famous figures, but as participants in the arguments in which we are still engaged every day. So in addition to talking about these famous philosophers and their ideas, the book also talks about the debate we're having over healthcare, over bailouts and bonuses, over the ethics of torture, over affirmative action, income distribution, same-sex marriage, because the idea is that when we argue about these subjects, just beneath the surface of the positions we take and the arguments we make are big ideas about what does justice really mean, what does freedom consist in, what are the claims of the common good, what does it mean to be a citizen. So that's the project. It won't surprise you to hear that it seems to me that our political debate isn't going all that well these days. Most of what passes for political deliberation consists of shouting matches on cable television, ideological food fights on the floor of Congress. And I think one of the reasons for the poverty of political discourse these days is that we pay less attention than we should to the big moral questions and the questions of justice that lie just beneath the surface of the positions that we take. So what I would like to do this evening is to take one of the philosophers I deal with in the book, Aristotle, and give you a very short lecture about Aristotle's theory of justice, and then have a discussion about how his conception of justice applies to things we care about and argue about today. So first, the lecture. Are you ready? Okay, thank you. According to Aristotle, justice means giving people what they deserve. That's it. That's the lecture. Now, you may say, well, that's good enough, but don't the hard questions really set in when it comes to figuring out who deserves what and why? Well, you would be right to think that. So let's take the example of flutes. Suppose we're distributing flutes. Who should get the best ones? Now, here it would help if we could just bring up the house lights a little bit, because I'd like to see what people have to say about it. And actually, I'd like to take some volunteers. We have people with microphones who will come. We have some flutes to distribute. Who should get the best flutes? Raise your hand if, just to start us off, what would you say? Say it a little louder. Those who can play them. So what about, it doesn't matter how well you play. Go ahead. Let's see.
Those who can play the best.
Those who can play the best. And let's keep the microphone there for a moment.
Okay.
What's your name?
Carmen Li Shu.
Carmen?
Yes.
You think that the best flute should go to the best flute players?
The best flute player, absolutely.
And, well, actually, Aristotle agrees with you, Carmen.
Oh, okay. I'm in good company. I'm in good company.
That doesn't mean he's right.
But I think I'm right, though.
Okay. But the harder question now, Carmen, is why do you think that the just thing to do is to give the best flutes to the best flute players? Why?
Because if you arbitrarily give it out to 5 people,
right,
and within those 5 people, you're going to have good, better, best, better,
right.
Best.
Some people are better at playing the flute than others. So why do you want the best ones to go to the best flute players?
Because when that person plays that flute, then I want to hear the best music that he can produce from that flute.
Okay, so you want the best flutes to go to the best flute players because you and all of us want to hear the best music being played.
Absolutely.
Yes, okay. That's very good. In fact, nobody likes to hear, have you ever heard very bad flute playing? I have, when I went to my kids when they were in elementary school, very young, and they get them started and they give them these plastic flutes, and you go to the concert, you've had that experience. And it sounds awful. Except for my child, it sounded wonderful. So Carmen gives a reason, a pretty persuasive reason, that justice means giving the best flutes to the best flute players because they'll play the best and we'll all be better off. We'll hear better music. That's a good answer, though it's not Aristotle's answer. You've parted company, Carmen, with Aristotle. Aristotle has a different reason. Did anybody have an idea of a different reason or what might be Aristotle's? Yes, what would you say? Go ahead.
So that the best players could teach future generations to play so that society as a whole could improve?
Well, that would be a good reason. That would be a good reason. And I suppose in a way that's edging closer to Aristotle's, but should I just tell you what he said?
Yeah.
He said the reason it's just for the best flutes to go to the best flute players is that's what flutes are for, to be played well.